Well, a series of resignations on Capitol Hill over the allegations of sexual misconduct. Well, it's the buzz on Capitol Hill, and some are thinking there are more names could also fall in the coming weeks. Just this week, we saw Minnesota Senator Al Franken, Michigan Congressman John Conyers, Arizona Congressman Trent Franks all on the way out. Franken, though, not going quietly as he threw a parting shot at President Trump when he gave his speech on the Senate floor.
Some of the allegations against me are simply not true. Others I remember very differently. I am leaving while a man who has bragged on tape about his history of sexual assault sits in the Oval Office, and a man who has repeatedly preyed on young girls campaigns for the Senate with the full support of his party.
So, what does all this mean when it comes to the political world? David Hawkins knows it well. He's senior editor of Roll Call. David, I think we could agree there's been a huge cultural shift that's been swift. It's been long in coming in Hollywood, in business, and on Capitol Hill. But in Washington, it's becoming a political issue. How do you see this going?
Well, sure. Everything is a political issue, and I think I see this as being one of the great one of the big campaign issues, probably of 2018. If you imagine for a moment that after this budget shutdown that we've been talking about, and after the tax bill is done, you go into the campaign season. President Trump and the Republican Congress don't really have great big legislative plans for next year. The legislative year will be short before campaign season really takes over, and it looks, I think it's a safe prediction to say that how Congress reckons with sexual harassers in its own midst, and how it reckons with its own system for handling this, which is widely criticized at the moment for lacking in transparency and for allowing some members of Congress to use taxpayer money to settle claims against them. How Congress reacts to this and whether it is perceived as one party handling it well and one party handling it badly will be one of the big issues of next year.
Yeah, I mean, so far, you get about like seven. There are seven members of the Congress, there they are, who have been accused. Some have denied it. Others have resigned in various different ways. Do you expect there will be more?
I do expect there to be more. Having said that, I don't know of any more. I think many of us in this town are working on stories, trying to talk to our sources, trying to understand if there are more, and trying to talk to some people about maybe allowing there to be more. Sure, seven. I'd quibble with you about one person on that list, but so 6, 7, that's a little bit more than 1% of the entire membership of Congress. Yes, I think that it is likely that there will be more. Remembering for a minute that Congress skews rich, it skews old, and it skews very male. And it is people, men of a certain generation, of an older generation, that are more likely than not to have gotten away with this culture of harassment for many years. Yes, I think there'll be more.
Yeah, and that's what you said earlier about that Office of Compliance. What, $17 million in taxpayer money to settle, like 268 cases so far? Like, no one ever knew anything about that except the members of Congress.
So yes, we should note for a second that those numbers are true over the last 15 years for all claims of all workplace problems in Capitol Hill. To the moment, we only know about 2 of them involving sexual harassment, and there are 2 of the members that you had on your screen a minute ago there. Blake Farenthold, $84,000. He's a Republican from Texas. And just last night, we at Roll Call reported $220,000 in taxpayer money to settle harassment claims against Elsie Hastings, a Democrat from Miami.
Yeah, the 7, it's a variety of type of issues, of course, not just sexual allegations. Meanwhile, there's Elsie Hastings, who, he'd been impeached at one point. He had been a judge, and then he ran for Congress.
He was a federal judge. He was convicted of corruption. That conviction was, in many ways, overturned. He was able to run for Congress. He's been in Congress now for more than 20 years. This involved a woman on the staff of a committee that he ran. It was widely reported that she was complaining against him, but we only learned Roll Call only reported last night the amount of the settlement, which is almost approaching triple the other one that we knew about, Blake Farenthold, which is $84,000.
You think Congress is really going to overhaul this?
I do. I think that this is something that the Republicans they have been slow off the mark, the Republican leadership, as you noted. Senator Franken had to resign. John Conyers had to resign. Those two sort of got out front, sort of as being sort of the members that were going to be required to be sacrificed. The Republicans were a little slow off the mark with Trent Franks. They still haven't responded truly. They've been all over the map on Roy Moore, and they've been silent on the president. But I think that the Republican leadership is going to realize that they need to drive changes in the system, and I think with the help of some Democrats. I think, there aren't too many real anti-incumbent elections in this country. The last time there was a real anti-incumbent congressional election way back in 1992 after the House bank scandal. That was the last time that more than 10 members of each party were defeated in the same election.
Yeah, going in.
I think that this threatens to happen again unless both parties reform that system.
Yeah, that was the money in the stamps that they were just grabbing the loot, like bank robbers. Finally, I mean, we just made a point about the political aspect with the Republican leadership. Here's what the Wall Street Journal editorial has said just a couple of days ago. The Democrats are eliminating their stains. The Republicans are endorsing theirs. You have to believe in magic to think this is going to end well for Republicans. If Mr. Moore wins, he will haunt the Trump presidency. Chess is a bloodless game, and high-stakes political chess is a brutal game. It's time for the GOP to protect itself if Mr. Trump won't. What does that mean if Mr. Moore wins on Tuesday?
Super powerful editorial. I think it's an excellent point. Trent Franks, he's known in conservative circles as a very vocal conservative. Blake Farenthold, not so well known. Roy Moore is by far and away, if he wins, the most prominent person with a sexual harassment problem in Congress. It's a huge problem for them. Mitch McConnell says that he will open an ethics committee investigation if Mr. Moore wins on Tuesday and comes to Congress. How they handle that
does that mean public hearings?
It could be. I mean, what would they need to do? They would essentially need to reinvestigate these women who have come forward and talked to the Washington Post and try and decide in their own venue whether these women are credible. So, yes, it could be public hearings. These women could be called upon to testify publicly. Roy Moore could be called upon to testify publicly. We don't really know how this will shake out. To be honest, the Senate Ethics Committee has been a pretty sleepy place for several years. It would be much busier next year for Moore wins.
Well, remember the controversy with Anita Hill. That could be replayed in the coming year. Wow. David Hawkins, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
Of course.